Hello and welcome back to another episode of Generation Ochi. My name is American Ben, and today we are going to explain the desires of Sweet Home's monsters. Now, y'all know me by now. I love making videos in which I peer into the souls of a work's characters and attempt to excavate their most subtle attributes. However, sometimes we just have to do a fun and simple video because the masses beckon we deliver answers to pressing questions. Okay, maybe not the masses, but at least some of you. What happened here is that Congo finally watched Sweet Home. You know, the show about the residents of the Green Home apartments who suddenly find themselves trapped in a world overrun with hellish monsters. And such monsters are supposedly manifestations of people's inner desires. Now, we've done 2 Sweet Home videos on this channel already, in which we actually claim that the specific desires that lead people in the show to monsterize are not that important. And I stick by that. The show doesn't really spend too much time exploring such desires, and instead deepens the message a bit, or perhaps extrapolates it to speak more broadly about the nature of monsterization and humanity. Watch those videos if you're interested. However, after Congo watched the show, we got into a conversation about it, and we realized that we couldn't figure out what all of the monsters' desires were. And when we searched around a bit, we realized that no one as of yet has done a video on this subject. So I looked into Congo's eyes, and he looked into mine, and...
No, that never happened.
What do you mean it didn't happen?
Just never happened, man. Never did.
Fine, whatever. What really happened is that we were like, we have to do this. We have to make the monster desire video. So that's what we're going to do today. The first monster we experienced was the starving monster in episode 1. This character is one of Cha Yoon-soo's neighbors. Hyun-soo walked out of his apartment to find her eating a cat. In the webtoon, it's revealed that this woman was an actress who was under harsh pressure from her manager to maintain a strict diet. Thus, she was very hungry, apparently enough to eat a raw cat. Not that a cooked one would be better. I love cats. You know what I mean. Obviously, her desire was to eat, as she repeatedly made mention of her hunger. And her monstrous form was witch-like and featured sharp teeth, I suppose to aid her carnivorous tendencies. We don't really know what her special ability is if she had one, but we can say for sure that she was pretty powerful, as she was able to put some serious dents in a metal door. I believe the last time we saw this monster, Sang-wook was working out his differences with her. Next up, we ran into the tongue monster towards the end of the first episode. We don't know who the man behind this monster was, as we met him in monster form. However, the rest we can speculate on. This monster used his extendable proboscis-like tongue to attack his targets, both by whipping it around and also by sucking the life out of people. The show doesn't make it clear what this monster's desire was. However, my first take was that he was some sort of leech who drained other people of all they had for his own pleasure and benefit. According to the webtoon, his desire was to have it all, and so my initial inference wasn't too far off. I suppose the tongue is kind of a symbol for indulgence. As to why he looks like Slender Man, not sure on that one. This monster was last seen in episode 5 when the protein monster grabbed him. Next, in episode 2, we ran into the blind monster pre-monsterization. We don't know much about this guy's background, but when we found him in the stairwell, he was very upset at someone who I presume was his boss. This guy held a lot of deep-seated hostility towards people who had, in his view, wronged him. He pretty clearly stated his desire as well. He wanted to kill everyone, though I think it's probably more accurate to say that he harbored murderous rage towards his boss specifically. In monster form, he took on a sort of goblin-looking appearance. I suppose goblins are creatures who have evil intentions, as the human form of this monster certainly did. Jung Jae-hun ended up slicing half the blind monster's head off, which is why it was also known as the lotus fruit monster. By the way, was I the only one who was really disgusted by his half head, but also for some reason couldn't stop looking at it? Anyway, when the blind monster lost half his head, he also lost his vision, and so his hearing ability became greatly enhanced, though at times his acute auditory abilities were a weakness as well. This monster's special move was a sort of stabbing attack that he executed using his spiked extending limbs. The blind monster hasn't been seen from since the protein monster threw him out of a window in episode 3. The next monster to show up was the eyeball monster towards the middle of episode 2. Again, we don't know much about the human who preceded the monster here, but I think it's safe to say he was a bit of a creep. His desire was most likely to spy or peep on people, thus he took the form of a man with a long extendable neck and a giant eyeball for a head. This monster defended itself by coiling around its enemies and squeezing them to death like a snake. However, to be fair, it didn't appear that this monster was looking to attack anyone, he just wanted to peep and creep, as he didn't go after Hyun-soo until Hyun-soo attacked him first. This monster's head was severed by a shot from Handu-6's crutch gun, and we last saw it not long after that. Next up, we ran into the protein or steroid monster at the start of episode 3, though we did hear his voice at the end of episode 1. Once again, we don't know who the human behind the monster was, but we can speculate that he was a meathead gym bro and that he had an obsessive desire to get bigger and more muscular. Though perhaps we should just say more specifically he wanted protein. At one point, Jisoo tried to hit him down low with a bat, but I mean steroids, so there seemed to have been some shrinkage there. And between that, steroids and the bat, there was some serious baseball commentary going on. The protein monster was defeated and presumably killed in the epic fight at the beginning of episode 8. Next, we ran into the spider monster, which is supposedly inspired by the tentacle monster from the webtoon in the early part of episode 3. Again, we have no knowledge of who the human was who turned into this monster. We did get to see a lot of its abilities though. It was basically a giant superpowered spider that could climb around with speed and agility and spun webs to trap its prey. In the webtoon, the tentacle monster's desire was to survive and eliminate threats to its life. However, given that in the show this monster was reimagined as a spider who trapped its prey, I wonder if its preceding human's desire was to trap people in its nefarious schemes or something of the like. There could be a kidnapping parallel there as well. We last encountered the spider monster in the beginning of episode 7 when Hyun-soo jammed his electric spear into it and apparently killed it. Next up, in episode 4, we were introduced to the infant monster, which I more see as the womb monster, given that it comes inside of what appears to be a uterus. Of course, this monster was what evolved out of the character Umiyong, a grieving mother who lost her child in a tragic accident. Myung-suk was a kind person and a loving mother, and when her child died, she couldn't let go and continued to push an empty stroller around and experience visions of her dead kid. Her desire was obviously to have her child back, though in the webtoon, she, as in the character Myung-ja-lim, also desired to avoid harming anyone. In any case, her more positive desires led her to transform into a more docile, harmless monster. She was reunited with her child as a womb with a baby in it. A freaky baby with a giant head, that is. This monster was last seen intact at the end of episode 10. Next, in episode 5, we briefly got to know the Reach monster. This monster was formerly a resident of the Green Home Apartments whose young son was killed by a monster, possibly the Speed monster, as in his diary he wrote that he had tried to save his son from the monster, but it was too fast and so he couldn't catch his son's hand in time. He lamented not being able to reach far or fast enough to save his son, thus he desired to hold his son's hand. This is also why his monster form was humanoid, with the addition of long arms and giant hands which obviously could be used as weapons. Sang-wook killed this monster soon after it was introduced. Next, in episode 4, we met the Speed monster, who kind of looked like a minotaur type creature with horse legs. We don't know who the Speed monster was in human form, but the webtoon informs us that he was a track and field athlete who was obsessed with becoming faster. He seemed like he was probably a pretty maniacal and psychopathic person as a human, given how aggressive, angry, and violent he was as a monster. In episode 7, this monster was set on fire by An Gil-seo. Next, in episode 6, the hair monster appeared, or at least that's my name for this monster. In human form, the hair monster was Kim Suk-hyun, a grocery store owner who frequently physically and emotionally abused his wife. A small-statured man, he had quite an inferiority complex which manifested as cruelty and anger towards others. He desired respect, and his monster form was representative of this. As a human, he wore a toupee, which was a nod to his insecurities about his body, and also in his perspective, perhaps with a full head of hair, his appearance would improve and people would show him more respect. Thus, he became the hair monster. He was killed by his wife towards the middle of episode 6. Next, towards the end of episode 6, we first saw the slime monster. The slime monster was formerly a little boy who lived at Greenhome. He transformed after witnessing his mother's death at the hands of the blind monster. The reason he became the kind of monster he did is twofold. 1, he liked to play hide and seek with his friends, and 2, after what happened to his mother, he desired to avoid monsters. In liquid form, as the slime monster, he could more easily hide himself in hard-to-reach areas like vents and slip out of sight. The slime monster was burned to death in the beginning of episode 10. Next, at the end of episode 8, we encountered the fly face monster, though it's possible this guy was already transformed into a monster by episode 3. In human form, the monster was the security guard at Greenhome. He hated his job and felt like the tenants of Greenhome expected him to do too much.
미안해. 이게 원래 내 일이 아닌데 주말이라 사람이 없다고 해서 나한테 하여간 여기 사람들은 경비하기를 아주 개똥으로 해고.
And then they would show their appreciation by giving him rotten fly-covered fish. And I couldn't really tell for sure given the language barrier, but that might have been a purposeful prank. If you could understand Korean, let me know what you think down in the comments below. Anyway, the webtoon character that this character was inspired by desired to kill everyone. However, I think it's probably more accurate to say that he more desired just to get back at the Green Home tenants. All of the above is why in monster form he was swarming with flies and attacked the tenants with unbridled rage. It was fitting that he wielded a weed whacker because he had said in human form to Hyun-soo that he was expected to do jobs outside of the purview of what a security guard is supposed to do, and weed whacking is not something that a security guard would often have to do. This monster was burned to death along with Jaehan at the end of episode 8. Next, we have Cha Yoon-soo, who I saved for the end here because he's a different type of monster. He was a special infectee, someone who was able to hold himself back from full monsterization. In his hybrid monster-human form, Hyun-soo could shoot a wing-like appendage of spikes out of his right wrist and use it to attack enemies, an ability that reflects the self-harm he engaged in. He was also capable of regeneration and could heal from grievous wounds. It's possible that the reason he was able to hold back from fully monsterizing was because he simply had some sort of special ability to do so. However, this ability might be reflective of his desires. As in, he is stuck between two forms just as he is stuck between desires. On one hand, he wants to kill himself given his depression and all the pain he's been through, including losing his family in an accident, and on the other hand, he wants to be back with his family and protect the people he cares about. Thus, just as he has mutually exclusive desires, he has mutually exclusive forms. Will he embrace the monster within him or his humanity? Finally, we have maybe the hardest monster to discern, Umiyong. Given that the webtoon can't help us here. Umiyong was one of the gang members who first appeared in episode 9. At the end of that episode, he revealed himself to be a monster. However, though he claimed it, I don't quite see how he is like Hyun-soo in terms of having the ability to resist monsterization. It seems to me that he did fully monsterize into a liquid form, and that endows him with the ability to take over other bodies. Though perhaps it has to do with the fact that he is still self-aware. Nonetheless, Umiyong believes that humans and monsters cannot coexist, that humans will harm monsters no matter what, and that he is a chosen one, selected by nature to evolve into a greater, more powerful being than he was as a human. The way I interpret his monster form is that his very desire is power, and thus, as a monster, he is tremendously powerful. He also wants to subjugate humans, and thus he has the power to take over and control any human he wants. Anyways, that is the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments down below what you think I got wrong, what you think I got right. Please do give the video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Remember to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell so you don't miss a damn thing. For now, my name is American Ben, Generation Ochi. Peace.